Welcome, and thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. Do you feel exhausted all the time? Are you one of millions of Americans who say that running on empty most of the working week is something they experience on a regular basis? And what about these millennials, these youngsters that are anywhere from the ages of 12 to 25 years old who are always constantly complaining that they're tired? Chances are there might be the possibility of chronic low energy, which is a form of tiredness so debilitating that a good night's sleep just simply won't fix it. It's also the kind of fatigue that is dangerous and is often behind many mental and physical illnesses. On the program today, we're going to be joined by Angela Watson-Robertson as we discover how we can fight fatigue the natural way by offering some simple natural solutions to help our listeners fight fatigue in a natural state. She is an integrative nutrition and board-certified health coach who has designed a science-backed program called Fatigue Warrior to help many regain their zest for life. I'd like to welcome to the Beyond 50 radio program today our guest, Angela Watson-Robertson. Angela, thank you for being on the program today.
Thank you, Daniel. I'm so glad to be here.
Are you feeling energetic? Are you ready for this? You got the zest for life, or are you fatigued?
Yeah, I am feeling energetic. I am actually halfway through my pregnancy, so I'm pregnant, and pregnancy has its own fatigue journey, but I am excited and energetic to be talking with you today.
Oh, very good. Now let's talk about your journey and how you got started on that. Were you one of these people that was just constantly tired and couldn't figure out, no matter how much sleep you got, why this was continuing?
Yeah, so in my former career, I was in sales, and I was constantly traveling and on the go, and I had a really stressful job, and I was just constantly tired no matter how well I ate, no matter how much I exercised or how much sleep I got. I still woke up exhausted all the time. And, it took me a few years to really put the puzzle pieces together and figure out why that was. And I eventually found out that I had adrenal fatigue very severely, and I needed to make a lot of lifestyle changes and diet changes to get my energy back, kind of get my life back.
So now let's talk about what it is that you tend to see people experience. I mean, what is really going on there? Is it just stress? I mean, is it a variety of different things? What is it exactly?
So adrenal fatigue, which some of your listeners may not have heard of before, because 5 years ago I didn't know exactly what adrenal fatigue was. So, to tell a little bit about kind of what it first is, it's when your adrenal glands, which are the small lumps of tissue, they're located directly above your kidneys when they become triggered, and they become triggered from stress. And I know we all hear stress is bad, we don't want stress, but when I use the word stress when it comes to adrenal fatigue, really what I'm referring to is an overproduction of hormones such as adrenaline and cortisol. And when our bodies overproduce those hormones because of our modern lives, kind of our go-go quick lives, over time our adrenal glands can become so damaged from being so hyperactive. So that type of physiological stress can really affect every system of our body and make us exhausted all the time.
Now, what are typically some of the things that people feel when it comes to having this kind of fatigue?
So some of the symptoms, and they can be very different. Sometimes people will have adrenal fatigue and not experience many symptoms. Other times people will feel all of them. But if you're someone who crashes in the early part of your day, so, you got a good night's sleep, you're eating okay, but then, 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you're just dead tired. And it's not just because you stayed up late. It's kind of a chronic issue that you're having every day. Also, if you have more energy at night when you're at home instead of in the mornings, if you're often having trouble falling asleep, but then also when you wake up in the morning, you still feel unrested, like you've never even slept. Those are a few things. And a few other things are continual sweating, specifically in your armpits, even if you haven't exercised. If you're always thirsty or you're craving salt. And one big thing that a lot of people I work with say is if you're constantly craving stimulants like coffee or cigarettes or soda, those can be symptoms that are saying, hey, your adrenal glands need some support.
Now, what are some of the lifestyle things that can lead people to have this? I know we've covered stress, but what are some other things that are going on here?
Yeah, that's a great question because there's a lot more going on than necessarily just, hey, we're stressed. We have a really tough job, or we have some kind of trauma or intense experience going on in our life. As you're alluding to, sometimes it can be, lifestyle factors. So diet, exercise, whether we have a routine or not. So when I work with clients, we really kind of want to look at every area of their life. So maybe they're going through some type of extended, stressful experience like a divorce or a bankruptcy, or even something good like a new baby or, a wedding and getting married. So there could be some lifestyle factors that are making that person really burn the candle at both ends for a long period of time. Also, there could be an underlying hormone imbalance, which could potentially be related to the adrenal glands being overstressed. That can cause a hormone imbalance. There could also be some emotional issues from trauma from the past that are unresolved. There also could be, more of a lifestyle, kind of like work. So, if you are really pushing it at work and not taking time to rest, maybe you're working 12-hour days, 6 days a week, those type of things over time, if you do it for many months or a year or more, that could cause other issues with your body.
Now, here's one I'd kind of like to throw out there I think is pretty intriguing as well. We touched on stress, but let's talk about the power of a person's thoughts. Do you find that can actually have a pretty big, way of causing a person to feel that tired feeling, that foggy feeling, that dizzy feeling, things like that?
That's a great question. I do think there is a connection. I wouldn't necessarily say, if you start thinking positively that you're necessarily going to, quote-unquote, fix adrenal fatigue. However, I do think that what we think does connect to our bodies, that body, mind, spirit connection, how we are framing our thoughts, what we're allowing ourselves to say repetitively in our mind and in our thoughts does affect our energy. I mean, you've probably experienced it. You're feeling sluggish and having maybe a rough day, and you start to really, maybe you watch a video that helps you think more positively, or you spend some time with an animal, your pet, and you're in your thoughts, you're thinking more about how loved you are, or how safe you are, or all the things you're grateful for, and you're smiling, you'll notice that your physiology will change. So I think in tandem with a lot of other lifestyle, maybe even supplements or diet, I think the thoughts is a big piece. And I do see people that, they're eating all the best foods out there, they're exercising well, they are maybe on some of the most high quality supplements, and then they're still, filling their minds with negativity all day. That can still bring down their energy. So you're right.
Yeah, I thought I would bring that up because a lot of times people will go through the day with that story that goes on in their head about circumstances in front of them, and they'll make them other than what they actually are. And they, for whatever reason, we naturally as human beings seem to take things in a negative direction, always looking at the worst outcomes, making ourselves less worthy than we actually are, things like that. And I thought that would be an important thing because although you may find yourself believing you're thinking positive, the question comes, but how often do you see that other story running through your day, that theme, for instance, and to catch yourself doing that? And I wonder, is that sort of one of the exercises that you like to share with people to, kind of get in the habit of?
Yes, so I created a program called Fatigue Warrior that really is a blend of an online program and also one-on-one coaching with me. And in, I believe it's the third module of the online portion of that program, I go through a lot of different techniques, some that I have created and others that I've borrowed. So techniques like emotional freedom technique, which is a form of tapping that can really help you shift your vibration and shift your energy. Even movement like yoga and other belly breathing techniques that you can do that really can help you kind of shift your energy. So what I like to have people do is, let's start with, what you're putting in your body when it comes to food or supplementation, and then let's start looking at also what you're putting in your body through your thoughts. And some of those techniques that I talk about in that module can really help someone start reframing and being more in that gratitude state. Instead of playing, like you said, playing that tape over and over again, maybe feeling like a victim or feeling like something is hopeless. because I think it is a big connection. And also another thing I see is when people start to feel better from, maybe it's from diet changes or from getting more exercise or from, sleeping better, often those thoughts are a little bit easier to change as well. Sometimes it's hard to tell someone if they're really suffering and they're uncomfortable or they're in pain to say, hey, you need to think positively. So that's where I start first with, some of the diet and lifestyle changes, and then we start working on the thoughts, because that might be a little bit easier to shift once you're feeling a little better.
Now, we talk about supplementation. Obviously, people say, well, what about my diet, things like that. But let's take a look at how people are eating today. Even if you start moving into a direction that you believe you're buying organic, you're staying away from the GMO situation. But there's a lot more to it than that, isn't there?
Yeah, there really is. I do recommend that people focus on eating organically and that they focus on a whole foods diet, so a diet that is rich in foods that, they're not processed, they don't have added sugars, they look very similarly when you eat them as they would when they come out of the ground, so to focus on that. But I understand living in our modern world, it can be hard, to eat that well. And you're right, that's, only part of the picture, eating organically. There's also focusing on reducing toxicity in your body, and then really connecting with what foods work for your body and don't. So looking at things like food sensitivities or allergies and that type of thing, getting more of a variety in your diet.
Yeah, we've certainly talked on this program about how you need to stay away from, as much as possible anyway, the middle aisles of the grocery store and mainly concentrate on the outer areas of the grocery store, which is where all the natural food is. I always like to say, if you can pick up an orange and it looks like an orange and smells like an orange, it's an orange. It's a different thing when you're getting it in a box.
Yeah, I agree, because, it is very convenient to have things that are, processed or things that are in a box, but I agree. If you can keep it to a minimum, or maybe just when you're traveling or when you're in a pinch, but not your day-to-day diet, then you're probably going to be better off in general for the average person.
Now, water is something you talk quite a bit about. Now, there's an area that a lot of people don't really find themselves drinking as much as I guess you should. First of all, we'll talk about, how much is a good amount of water for someone to have this day and age, but interestingly enough, there is a friend of ours who we've actually had on the program who is a colon specialist, and he performs colon hydrotherapy for people with the integration of oxygen into this therapy that he has, and he says there was a time that he actually had a lady into his program to have this implemented, and he said that she was actually dehydrated, and this was pretty astounding, by as much as 5 gallons of water. And I thought to myself, how does somebody like that even move? But what do you find there when you typically work with people?
Yeah, I do think hydration is key. What I recommend is that people try to drink half of their healthy body weight in water each day. So, if someone were overweight, I would say not necessarily that they need to drink half of their current weight, but, when your body is in balance, what is kind of the typical healthy or average weight that your body tends to feel good at? I would drink half of that in ounces. So if you're 150 pounds, or if that's your average healthy weight, you'd want to drink 75 ounces of water per day. So I think quantity is a big piece, getting enough of it, and, small sips of water kind of all day long throughout the day. I recommend having, a water bottle with you, or if you're lucky enough to work from home, just constantly keeping your glass filled and just really sipping on it all day, and trying to get most of your water earlier in the day rather than later, because if you drink it all with dinner, then that may disrupt your sleep. You may be getting up all night, to go to the restroom. The second piece with water is the quality of it. So not just getting the right amount, but making sure that what you're drinking is purified water. I drink reverse osmosis water. There's lots of research that, listeners can do, and there's specialists out there. I'm not a water specialist that could help people really figure out what's the best water. There's some great home water filters, but I think that the quantity is a big piece. That's kind of the first step, and then the second step is really looking at that quality and making sure you're getting really good water. I don't usually recommend that people, have tap water as their main source of their intake.
Especially in areas where you might find chlorine in it, things like that. So
yes,
interesting.
Chlorine and fluoride and other things that cannot be good. And if someone is, really healthy and they're, potentially if they're young and they are really healthy and they don't have any kind of health problems, they could drink tap water and be fine. But over time, if that is their core source of water, it could be sluggish, and especially for someone who already has an issue with energy or their adrenal fatigues are really taxed. Their body's going to have a harder time processing and filtering out all of those impurities from the water.
Now, one thing I know a lot of people might be experiencing when they have this fatigue is a feeling of brain fog or dizziness. And certainly on our program, we've talked about what we would call the brain-gut connection. And that is that you need to be able to get your gut or your digestive system back into balance. And you talk about things such as prebiotics and probiotics. Tell us a little bit about that and why that's important in this situation here.
Yes, so even though I'm focusing specifically with my recent program on the adrenal glands, your gut, as you allude to, your entire digestive system is a huge piece of health. So we now know that I think some people say even up to 80% of your immune system lives in your gut, so in your intestines, in your stomach, your entire digestive tract. So, of course, if we want to have more energy and we want to feel better, we want a healthy immune system. So then kind of one of the pillars of health would be to focus on making sure that our gut health is in a good place. And one thing I like to say is that, there's that old saying, you are what you eat, but it's really you are what you digest. So even if you are eating, really great food, maybe you have your own organic garden at your home and you live off of that, which is fabulous, even so, you'd want to make sure that your gut is able to assimilate all of that. And same with supplements. You want to make sure, you're absorbing everything that you're taking. So the gut health is really important. And I do recommend supplementation, at least to some extent. And yes, probiotics and prebiotics are really helpful with helping put in a lot of the good bacteria in your gut and helping maintain that balanced gut flora. So with probiotics, which is more of what I have focused on in my research, I recommend that with my clients that they take a daily probiotic. And the one I recommend is a powder, and you can put it in your smoothie or mix it in with water, and it really just helps your gut keep that balance. And it helps with digestion. You can also add in other supplements or, such as digestive enzymes, but the probiotic is going to be a good baseline for you. I also, when you talk about probiotics, you want to talk about things like fermented foods. So, your listeners have probably seen in the health food stores kombucha and kefir and, sauerkraut with all, and, of course, yogurts that have the probiotics. I usually recommend that people try some of those, see if they work for their body, because not everyone tolerates, things like fermented foods well. But if they work for them, work them in slowly into their diet a little bit every other day, in addition to a probiotic, can really help balance out the flora in your gut. In addition to, obviously, modifying your diet and, drinking that healthy water.
The other thing, too, when it comes to probiotics, I remember I was talking with a guest on the program, and she was explaining that, yes, you can go and you can go to the store and you can buy a good probiotic supplement. Certainly, that's not a bad thing. I mean, certainly you're moving in the right direction. But she says a lot of times the challenge with those is they'll get into your stomach and they'll get digested there, and that's as far as they go. And she says you really need something that's going to go deeper into your small and larger intestines. That's the area that you really want to try to get down there. And she says, again, they'll kind of get that far, but they won't get as far down as they need to. And so you can see how when you recommend, for instance, fermented foods, things like kombucha, kefir, sauerkraut, or even, doing your own fermentation process, which my wife and I, we actually brew our own kombucha. Very inexpensive, and it's actually pretty intriguing when you watch the SCOBY thing grow. And it's amazing how much you can start making in a short period of time. I started out with a 2-quart jar and a little SCOBY from a friend of ours, and now I'm brewing basically 10 gallons a month. And it tastes great too, especially if you decide to add, for instance, fruit or, one guy recommended you can bottle it by putting like a little bit of like a natural organic, let's say a mango juice, like a little bit at the bottom. Then you pour the kombucha in there and it continues to feed on that. It turns it into a mango flavored kombucha. I mean, just the things are unlimited in that you can use these scobies for cooking, and this is a way that you can get that deeper in there and so forth. But it was a fascinating journey that you just kind of continue to want to learn, and so forth, and maybe even teach your kids about. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, years ago, my mother taught me how to make the kombucha. It was probably about 14 years ago, before I even had seen it in stores, that I did similarly. I started making my own kombucha at home, and I remember the mushroom and seeing it, grow. And like you, I eventually had way more than I could ever drink, and, started giving some of the mushroom babies, some of the other mushrooms to other people so they could start making it. So that's cool.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. There's no doubt about that. Now, there are core supplements, at least according now. I want to be sure. Is your website fatiguewarrior.com?
Yeah, so I have a main website, AngelaWatsonRobertson.com.
Okay.
But specifically for my program that helps with adrenal fatigue, it is fatiguewarrior.com.
Okay, very good, because I see that there are core 4 supplements that you suggest that people should be taking daily. Let's talk about what those are real briefly.
Yeah, so of course there are lots of supplements out there, but I really tried to, specifically with this program, to think about my experience with struggling with having energy and with adrenal fatigue. And the last thing I want to do is encourage someone to, be taking, 5, 8, 10 supplements a day, because if you take too many supplements, then even if they are good supplements, it could kind of make your system sluggish, because everything your system has to process. So I really wanted to really whittle it down to the top few supplements that I thought were most needed. And so that's why I came up with the core 4 recommended vitamins and supplements for the Fatigue Warrior course. So there are 4 of them. So the first one is a multivitamin. And the supplements I recommend are from USANA Health Sciences, and they are manufactured in Salt Lake City, Utah. And so the multivitamin really is to help fill in the gaps of the vital vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants that you might be deficient in or lacking. So it really helps with, free radicals and oxidative stress, that type of thing. The second, besides a high-quality multivitamin that I recommend that people be taking, I recommend that everyone take some type of omega-3 supplement. And the one I recommend is a mercury-free fish oil. So if someone is vegan or a vegetarian, there are vegan options, fish-free, non-animal product, but the one I recommend is a fish oil product, because there's a clear connection between increased energy and the improved mood that can come from taking fish oil regularly. Plus, our brains need omega fatty acids to function properly. The third one, as you talked about before, is the probiotic food supplement, which is really help your digestive system, boost your immune system, because also, as we talked about, your gut health is directly linked to energy and mood. And then the 4th supplement I recommend everyone be taking is vitamin D. And this one is kind of the VIP, the MVP, or the powerhouse of supplements. And we now know that, over 50,000 of the chemical reactions in your body require the presence of adequate amounts of vitamin D in your blood. And many people, if not most people, at least in the U.S., are deficient. So those are kind of the 4 I recommend: the high-quality multivitamin, the omega-3 fish oil, the probiotic, and the vitamin D.
Now, vitamin D is pretty responsible, too, for a lot of biochemical reactions and things going on in the body as well, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Over 50,000 of the chemical reactions in your body, they require some vitamin D. So, of course, if you're low, then, there's a long list of all the different things that could be, not working properly. And the interesting thing is, your body can make its own vitamin D, which sometimes people will say, well, I'll just go out in the sun more. I don't need to take a vitamin D supplement. The thing that I say to that is that, yes, some sun exposure can be super helpful, but in order to get as much vitamin D as you would need to go outside, mostly unclothed, for at least 30 minutes a day, every day of the year. And even then, different people, depending on their heritage and their skin color, still may not be absorbing enough sun. So that's why I say, let's just be safe and take a vitamin D supplement. So the second cool thing about vitamin D is it's converted into a hormone into your body. And the hormones are body's chemical messengers. They travel through your blood, to your tissues and your organs, and they activate all those chemical reactions that control everything from metabolism to growth to development of mood. So that's why I consider it one of the MVP of supplements. There's a long list of how it works to contribute to bone health, heart health, even cancer prevention, and really helps your immune system. So I just think it's one of those things that everyone should be taking. And the next question people usually ask with vitamin D is, well, how much should I take? I do recommend that clients get lab reports from their doctor to see what their current vitamin D levels are, because you don't necessarily want to take too much. And if you are low, you can take quite a bit. If you're low, you can take up to 5,000 or 10,000 IU per day, but you don't want to do that for a really long time. You want to do that just until you get your levels up to a 60 or a 90 mg or ml. The thing is, when you go to the traditional doctor, your lab reports may show if you're at a 40 or 50 that you have enough vitamin D, but that's probably still not optimal in my opinion. So I recommend that clients get their levels up higher to at least over 60.
Very good. I know there was my mother got involved with somebody who was part of I guess call it a direct marketing company where they had herbal supplements. And so he started getting her on this regimen, and she had called me one day, and I think this was probably about a week later. And she says, I got to tell you, man, I am just not feeling very good. And I said, well, describe to me what you're feeling here. And so she did. And I said, there's a very good possibility right now that you're on toxic overload. I said, how is this guy having you take these things? And I'm not a nutritionist or anything like that, but it just seemed reasonable that if you're not used to, using supplements, for some reason in America we seem to believe if something is good, well, then a lot more must be better. Yeah. And they don't realize it was by subtle degrees that you actually got yourself to where you are now, and it's going to be in subtle degrees that will bring you back to where you want to be. And so we took a look at it, and I said, well, how does the bottle recommend that you take this? And she says, well, it says to take, this much per day, daily. And I said, how much did he tell you to take? And she says, almost twice that. And I said, well, does that make any sense to you? And she says, no. And I said, why don't you go to taking these things the way they suggest you do it? And sure enough, about a week and a half later, she says, man, I feel fantastic.
Wow.
Crazy.
That's some really good advice. I think that really connects to the term bioindividuality, how we're all so different. Her doctor or physician may have had a client, or a patient the week before who didn't feel well until they took the double dose. So that's where I think what you recommended for her is great, to really be an advocate, and ask questions. So if you notice that your practitioner or, even someone like me, if your coach is saying, hey, let's take twice the dose, ask, well, why, what's the reason for recommending that? And then, listening to your body, and anytime, just like you said, anytime you are doing a supplement or changing your lifestyle and diet, we want to do it in baby steps and in increments. And anytime you start to notice, hey, I'm just not tolerating this well, or I'm not feeling well, that's when you want to almost daily be, monitoring things and changing things. And then, for her, it sounded like that was just too much. For whatever reason, what's going on with her body, she probably needs to do it in stages. And maybe eventually she will thrive on that higher dose, but to start it small. And so that's where I recommend people to not be taking maybe different, and it depends on the person, but in general, no more than 6 or 7 different types of supplements at a time, just because it may overburden your system, just like you said. And just mix it up, keep changing up your regimen. And I do recommend stay on your high-quality multivitamin, stay on your vitamin D, at least till you get your level higher. But sometimes there's other supplements that are more short-term and not long-term.
Now that we're coming up to the end of the program here, is there a website? I know we talked about them earlier. Why don't we go ahead and get those to our listeners so they can find out more?
Yes, so to learn more about me and my work, you can go to angelawatsonrobertson.com. And to learn more about Fatigue Warrior, which is a program that's really designed to help you learn how to fight adrenal fatigue naturally without expensive medications or really strict dieting, you can go to fatiguewarrior.com.
Very good. Thank you so much for joining us here on the program today.
Thanks, Daniel. Thanks for having me.
We want to thank you, the listeners out there, for tuning in. If you're not feeling too tired, then be sure to reach out and visit us at beyond50radio.com. There is the number 50. We can please encourage you to sign up for our weekly e-newsletter and keep up to date with what's going on in the world of Beyond 50 as well as our upcoming shows. I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you for joining us. This is the Beyond 50 radio program, and remember, live your day past halfway.